So as you're doing all of this, and you've had to go out and raise money. I'm curious about this journey as you're talking to investors. So do you have to find a specific investor that understands this stuff, or how? Because how has that process gone? I mean, it's because everyone talks about, man, raising money is so difficult, and this is an interesting journey for you because you're making a new category, and you really don't have a. You can't say that you're like the Uber of this or the Airbnb of that. I mean, you're creating something new. Talk about that process.
Sure. The best. So just to go off of what you said about the Uber of this or the Airbnb of that, the closest that we've gotten to that kind of statement is kind of like we're the Rotten Tomatoes of music. Um,
Wow.
that's just the Dopr. That would be just the Dopr score aspect. I think that's an oversimplification. But if I had to like get to something like that, anyway. But in terms of like the journey, you're absolutely right. It's difficult. And there's nothing like this. So, like, I was a neuroscientist, cognitive neuroscientist in music cognition, and usually, the question people ask you when you study that is, "What are you going to do with a PhD in music cognition, psychology, and neuroscience?" And my answer was always, "I don't really know, but I know I'm going to be better off with that degree than not, and I'll figure it out." And so before joining Secret Chord, I taught psychology at Stockton University as a visiting assistant professor for a year. And the general path was like, okay, continue with research, continue teaching. I'm a musician also, so keep on with that. It was only a 1 year gig, and after that, I was accepted to go to Wesleyan University as another teaching professor, and also to Max Planck Institute in Germany. And I was trying to like basically decide between these two paths of like doing more research in Germany or teaching more. At that time, Scott Miles, my co-founder, who I'd done this research with, he informed me that we were accepted to Project Music, this Google for Startups music tech accelerator, based out of Nashville, Tennessee. We spoke about kind of before we were on here live, and kind of I was like, okay, I'll see what this is all about. I think there's something here, and I think it'd be really cool if we made a business and a place for people who study music cognition and music technology, where like the only places you could go right now, for the music tech side, you can go to Pandora and you can go to Spotify, and there are like music tech companies, but there's nowhere that's really like human centered that brings together neuroscience and machine listening and artificial intelligence and music theory in this like kind of comprehensive way. And I guess it goes back to, it's kind of like the graphic novel too. It's like I've always, and my lab advisor at Drexel, he was from MIT Media Lab, and they had the same approach where, and Drexel University's Excite Center basically was built when I started grad school. And it was built off this philosophy that when you bring experts from a lot of different domains together, you start to tackle the most interesting questions. And that's where real innovation happens. And so, like, if you take the landscape of music data and music analytics, it's not very human centered. It's very algorithmic centered, which algorithms do a great job of learning from data and doing some kinds of predictions or generating what is likely to happen, but it can't get you that extra step. And so, to answer your question, Tim, about investors, um, I've spent a lot of time refining the pitch deck and the materials of the company and how we speak about the company, because we don't think that it needs to be and it hasn't been people who only invest, actually almost no music tech investment from
Wow.
like your standard music tech companies has been where the funding has come from. It's been from people who have heard this idea articulated on shows like yours, on like Inquiring Minds podcast, on Mindscapes podcasts, in Ars Technica and Psychology Today, and all these different media outlets that have like picked up kind of what we're doing. And they say, listen, if this thing, we're early stage. And so I would say the biggest hurdle in my fundraising has not been because of lack of concept or lack of idea. It's because of lack of actual product being in the market. And so I think the biggest leap, and these are conversations, we have a couple of lead investors that we're always kind of thinking about what are the next, we talk with them and with our team. It's an ongoing conversation with our advisors too. We have a great team of advisors from from Universal, Suhin Roy, who was over there, to people who are working at Big Machine Label Group, to product advisors who've worked at Google and Amazon Music, and all over the place, and getting that feedback and always learning about okay, your early stage, what does that mean in terms of your next milestone, and what do we need to deliver in terms of product developments that are going to keep people feeling this is hitting its marks. And so something we've been doing internally that I think has been really key is back to the spring of this year is we started making forward-looking forecasts of new music that came out on Friday. And we've kept this kind of, very internal. We've only shared it with our investors and our advisors, and we keep doing these forecasts. And every time we do a forecast, there's been a key model improvement, and we've seen accuracy go up. So we make these 3-month streaming projections of songs. So we say basically a song will likely get within this range of streams. It has an upside, which means basically a less than 10% chance of crossing a certain threshold. And then basically we track these metrics because we've established it looking backwards in time. And testing is one thing that people criticize back testing and say, okay, in the financial world, especially, we've had conversations about, just because you've back tested something in the past doesn't mean it's going to happen in the future. Markets change all the time is a criticism I've heard from some key investors. And my response to that is that's true. In financial markets, they're susceptible to all kinds of things happening, and it's not copying what's happened before. And I guess the feedback that I would say is what we're doing is different than a financial market is we are modeling a neuroscientific principle of music enjoyment and using that as a data source. And the brains of humans, right? The music is changing, but the brains aren't. And so to say that differently is the memory systems that I outlined in the beginning of the podcast. We're not developing a third memory system that I know of. There's 2 memory systems, and while the music is always changing, if we are to understand these patterns of surprise, not just today but over time, then you can rely on the fact that there's this data point that's based on actual brain studies and studies of music and analysis that are going to basically work moving forward because they've been true for 60 plus years of popular music. And in these tests that we've been looking at, it's been very informative, not only to see if the models are getting better, but really to see where the model sucks. What genres is it not performing well on, and why might that be? Or what new feature might need to be included because this level of artists we're missing, we don't have as high of accuracy on a different level of artists. And as we continue to build that, so I'd say the biggest roadblock has been and on the product side, it's we've been in stealth mode, getting that initial product out the door. We're launching this fall to a very closed beta round, small, about 100 artists who are going to be using the platform. And so that's where we are with everything right now. It's getting the final model together that we're ready to really get out there. The platform is looking great, and just getting to a key point where we have enough users, we have the right partnerships in place where, I think next spring or so, we're going to be looking to raise a much bigger seed round.
And with